Republicans better be careful because every time that Trump was impeached, his numbers went up. And every time he was indicted, his numbers went up because people didn't believe that this was warranted.
Yes, Bill O'Reilly is still alive. He might sound like he's dead, but he's still alive. And what he's saying there is actually pretty true. If the Republican Party really does plan to pursue impeachment of Biden with no evidence of wrongdoing, he could be, the Republican Party could be in a lot of trouble in the next election cycle. Now, it does look like Trump is one of the motivating factors behind Republican leadership's decision to pursue an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. And they're doing so again, despite the fact that there is absolutely no evidence so far indicating that Biden engaged in any wrongdoing or any impeachable offense. But this is a bit of a fishing expedition. The whole idea behind an impeachment inquiry would be to access certain financial records that they claim they don't have access to right now, even though they do. We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, let's go back to Donald Trump encouraging this and strategizing around this behind the scenes. Politico reported that on Sunday night, Trump had dinner at his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey, with Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, an ally of Trump, and Kevin McCarthy, of course, the House Speaker. At the gathering, the topic of impeachment was discussed, according to a person familiar with the conversation who spoke on condition of anonymity. But that's not all. Trump has also been strategizing with other GOP lawmakers, and it's not surprising that he would do this, and I'll explain why in a moment. Now, Trump has been speaking weekly with House GOP Conference Chair Elise Stefanik, who was the first member of the Republican leadership to come out in support of impeachment. The two spoke Tuesday after House Speaker Kevin McCarthy announced Republicans would be pursuing the inquiry, and that's according to two people familiar with that conversation. Now, again, none of this should be surprising. A, because of the fact that Trump very publicly has been demanding the impeachment of President Joe Biden. And Biden, he wrote on Truth Social, is a stone cold crook. You don't need a long inquiry to prove it. It's already proven. By the way, this is a post back in August. He continues to write that these lowlives impeached me twice, I won. He was impeached twice, but the Republican-controlled Senate was unwilling to basically convict him of those impeachment charges. But Trump continues, and indicted me 4 times, that's true. For nothing, that's untrue. Either impeach the bum, meaning Biden, or fade into oblivion, they did it to us, Trump says. All right, so he's been publicly calling for this. He's obviously not happy that they're just calling for an impeachment inquiry. He, I guess, wants to have impeachment proceedings with absolutely no evidence. But the other reason why this is so unsurprising to me is if you can recall the first reason why Donald Trump was impeached by the House of Representatives, it was due to the fact that Trump had withheld congressionally appropriated military aid to Ukraine and wouldn't release that money until Zelensky agreed to go on national television and announce a sham investigation into Joe Biden. Now, Trump knew that he was very likely going to run for re-election against Joe Biden, and he wanted to get a leg up in that election, so he thought that a sham investigation might actually help his chances with that. So a sham impeachment and sham impeachment inquiry, in his mind, I'm sure, is something that could be helpful to him for the upcoming election. Now, the absolute best part about this entire story is that the Trump-era Department of Justice actually put out a rule regarding impeachment inquiries that might actually end up helping Joe Biden. Now, the whole point was to retaliate for the fact that Donald Trump had been impeached. But remember, if a certain administration, let's say a Democratic administration, decides to engage in some bad behavior or engage in policy making that they think will only benefit them, they should consider the fact that they're not going to be in power forever. The next executive branch might actually consist of Republicans who will take advantage of the new rules or the new directives, the new guidelines that the previous administration had brought to fruition. And in this case, you have the Trump DOJ putting out a rule that now Biden could benefit from. So what do I mean by that? Well, apparently in January of 2020, the Donald Trump-led Justice Department formally declared that impeachment inquiries by the House are invalid unless the chamber takes formal votes to authorize them. That opinion, issued by the Justice Department's Office of Legal Counsel, came in response to then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's decision to launch an impeachment inquiry into Trump without initially holding a vote for it. Not only is it still on the books, it is binding on the current administration. Again, I just want to repeat, these rules are still binding, which means Kevin McCarthy simply declaring an impeachment inquiry is not enough. There needs to be a vote in the House for an impeachment inquiry. And in order for that to pass, Kevin McCarthy needs 218 Republicans to vote in favor of it. Now, that should seem easy considering the fact that Republicans currently control the House of Representatives, but they only do so by about 4 Congress members. And there are already a number of Republican Congress members who, are not in favor of this impeachment inquiry, and they see this as a political liability that could hurt their chances at getting reelected. They're also pretty well aware of the fact that the 2 separate House committees dominated by Republicans have failed to provide a shred of evidence incriminating Joe Biden. Now, the accusation by Republicans attempting to impeach him is that Joe Biden engaged in all sorts of shady business deals with foreign businessmen, okay? And that the go-between was Hunter Biden. The idea is that he sold his influence in order to secure tens of millions of dollars for himself. Now, I am willing to believe those types of allegations, even if it's a Democratic president, if I see the evidence. But again, that evidence has never come to fruition. So let's go back to the rules that were passed by the DOJ under the Trump administration. So Stephen Engel, who was the former head of the DOJ's Office of Legal Counsel, said this at the time: "We conclude that the House must expressly authorize a committee to conduct an impeachment investigation and to use compulsory process in that investigation before the committee may compel the production of documents or testimony." Now, back to McCarthy. McCarthy announces the impeachment inquiry this week, right? McCarthy's announcement on Tuesday that an inquiry would be launched without a formal vote is expected to feature significant scrutiny of actions taken by the Justice Department, FBI, and IRS in relation to its investigation of Biden's son Hunter and his foreign business dealings. All 3 agencies would be bound by the Office of Legal Counsel's opinion. And that's the very opinion, again, that was passed down during the Trump administration as Donald Trump was facing impeachment. Now, Biden could choose to heed the OLC opinion or not. He would also have grounds to assert executive privilege that could tie up the GOP investigations as part of this impeachment, which honestly, I don't think he should do. I really don't think that Biden's trying to hide anything. He shouldn't even give the appearance of attempting to hide anything. He should cooperate. However, Congress should vote on the impeachment inquiry. We should see whether or not McCarthy has the necessary votes to actually open this impeachment inquiry in the first place. Now, it doesn't appear as if Biden or the White House is stressing any of this. It's not even wall to wall on cable. A White House official said of the coverage of Speaker Kevin McCarthy's announcement that he would task the Oversight, Judiciary, and Ways and Means committees to further investigate allegations, unproven still, that Biden used past offices to help his son's business ventures. That the launch of an impeachment inquiry would not merit more blaring headlines may reflect the lack of concrete evidence supporting the charges, an absence acknowledged by even some congressional Republicans. You know what, why don't we go to those congressional Republicans? I've been talking about them, right? These are the congressional Republicans who are not buying what Kevin McCarthy and other Republican lawmakers like him are trying to sell. So let's hear what they have to say about all of this.
Here is what Ken Buck had to say about the push by some of his Republican colleagues, including Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, to impeach President Biden.
The time for impeachment is the time when there's evidence linking President Biden, if there's evidence linking President Biden to a high crime or misdemeanor. That doesn't exist right now, and it isn't really something that we can say, well, in February we're going to do this. It's based on the facts. You go where the facts take you.
2 days ago, you said that the time for impeachment is when there's evidence linking President Biden to a high crime or misdemeanor. You said, quote, that doesn't exist right now. Do you still feel that way tonight?
I have not seen any evidence that links President Biden to Hunter Biden's activities at this point.
And over on the Senate side, there is not much enthusiasm either. Republican Senators Shelley Moore Capito, Mitt Romney, Jerry Moran, Mike Rounds, Mitch McConnell, and even the extremely MAGA Tommy Tuberville have all thrown water on the idea of impeaching Biden before the 2024 election.
Sad. So I'm really curious to see if the DOJ is going to hold Congress, the House of Representatives in particular, to holding a vote in regard to whether or not they move forward with the impeachment inquiry. And if they do hold that vote, I mean, based on what we're hearing by several GOP lawmakers, it might not go through. And even Nancy Mace, who's a more moderate Republican, confesses the evidence isn't there, but we should do the impeachment inquiry anyway. Let's hear her argument.
Isn't it supposed to be the evidence that leads you to pursue impeachment and an impeachment inquiry?
Well, that's what the inquiry is for.
But there's already
more
investigations. I think that's where people are confused because it's not like.
But we don't have Joe Biden's bank records yet. And so one way to do that, my understanding, would be through an impeachment inquiry. So if that's what gets us those bank records, then I'm going to support it. I'm just saying, if you could see what I have seen, and I believe you deserve to see that.
But have you seen direct evidence related to President Biden? Because that's what we have not heard.
Well, we have to connect the dots, and that has to be through the bank records. If his bank records show nothing, the American people should know that too.
And you think it's worth launching that
100%.
to get to that?
I do. If that's what gets us the bank records, that's what we should do. On the impeachment side, the House would investigate, the Senate would essentially hold a trial, but no, I mean, the Senate's not going to hold a trial. There's not going to be 60 votes. It's not happening. It is, it's window dressing on impeachment, but an inquiry is an investigative tool. That's the difference between an impeachment vote and an inquiry.
We don't have the evidence, but we should do the impeachment inquiry anyway, which, by the way, appears politically motivated, looks bad for the Republican Party. We should do it anyway because we need access to financial records, right? Except they have access to quite a few financial records. On Monday, for instance, the Democrats released a 14-page memo detailing what they call the overwhelming failure of the Republicans' investigation into Biden, noting that the Oversight Committee has received more than 12,000 pages of subpoenaed bank records, reviewed more than 2,000 pages of suspicious activity reports, and spent hours interviewing witnesses, including 2 of Hunter Biden's former business associates. One of them, by the way, was Devon Archer, who did not tell them what they were hoping to hear. But none of the bank records released so far show any payment to the president. So look, if we lived in a sane world, and if we had a sane government, I would be fine with the impeachment inquiry if they went through with it, looked at whatever additional documents they want to look at, and realized that there's really no there and moved on. But that's not going to happen. We're going to be hearing about this sham impeachment endlessly, day in, day out, as the members of Congress who have no interest in actually governing and legislating and improving your life give you the illusion of governing, give you the illusion of actually doing something to benefit your life. And look, it's the same with the Democrats, right? The Russia investigation went on too long. There was a lot of smoke, but there was no fire. And it was a giant waste of time and resources. I will admit to that. I really hope that there will come a day where the Republican voters who have been told that this is one of the most important investigations of all time realize that they also, much like Democratic voters, have been scammed by members of their own party sitting in the, or sitting, walking, talking in the halls of Congress. It's frustrating. This is what politics has basically devolved to at this point. But again, if something does turn up, if there is some evidence to show that President Joe Biden engaged in illegal corruption, despite the fact that there's plenty of legal corruption baked into our system here in the United States, I'll be the first to raise my hand and say, wow, look, this investigation turned up some evidence of wrongdoing. But so far, it seems like a massive waste of time. And just going back to what Bill O'Reilly said, it could actually hurt the Republican Party by getting Democratic voters fired up enough to head out to the polls and vote for Biden. Same with some independents as well. So be careful what you wish for. You might actually get what you're asking. And if this impeachment inquiry turns into impeachment proceedings, I really don't think it's gonna play out so well for the Republican Party.
Thanks for watching the video, guys. We also love it if you hit the join button below, because that makes you a member, and members allow us to be independent, honest. We can be as progressive as we want, no corporate media influence, and that's all because of you guys. We love doing the show with our members. Hit the join button, become one of the Young Turks.